This is an ode to the forgotten feminine, with love letters to and from all kinds of women. Here for the daughters carrying the world upon their spine, wherefore the silence of our grandmothers we rise. Here to remember our power and shed our doubt. Forget the bullshit the patriarchy's on about. This is an ode to the forgotten feminine, with love letters to and from all kinds of women.
If you clicked on this episode, it's probably because you are exhausted of fighting what feels like a never-ending battle with your anxious, overthinking mind. But darling, this is the place where we lay it all to rest today. You might be known by everyone around you as the sensitive, deep-feeling gal who is everyone's therapist. She's always there for everybody at their beck and call. But maybe you've started seeing your insensitivity as a weakness because you're always on edge. You're always hypervigilant over everything that you say and do, and you're always exhausting yourself looking out for everybody else's needs before yours. But your sensitivity is definitely not a weakness, and in today's episode, I'm here to tell you why your anxiety feels like it has no off switch, and why that is tied to your identity as a people pleaser, whether that identity to you is conscious or unconscious. If you're new, welcome, and if you're not new, welcome back to the Letters to and From Women podcast. I'm your host, Mariana. I'm a somatic coach and nervous system guide for women, and this is a safe haven where high-achieving, sensitive, but perhaps deeply lost women come to learn how to rebuild their lives after building them on a foundation of self-abandonment. I teach your trauma how to exhale, your inner critic to retire, and your self-worth to take the wheel by helping you develop a resilient nervous system. By the way, if you're watching this episode on YouTube and you notice that my background looks a little different, it's because I'm playing a game of what room do I have the most fun recording in when no one is home? And currently in my mother's house, her living room has so many plants, and the sun is coming through this wonderful big window that outlooks into the city of Vancouver, and no one's home, so I figured I would take advantage of it. So I'm sitting on the ground. Let me see if I can tilt my camera and show you. My mic is sitting on some yoga blocks, and I also just gave you a super cute glance at my feet. But today I'm here to talk to you about why your anxiety probably feels like it never switches off, no matter how many self-help podcasts you listen to, how many times you meditate in a day, and how that is inextricably linked to your identity as a woman, but also to your identity as what I call the healer that never consented to being the healer. And this is especially true for eldest daughters, just like me. And my goal is that at the end of this episode, you walk out with the wisdom and the tools to really understand how to take your body's consent back from places and people where you've overgiven and maybe even forgotten yourself in the unconscious pursuit of belonging, love, or any kind of validation. And I want to start this episode off by telling you a personal story about my journey through this subject matter, and I really want you to see if any of the pieces of my story land with yours. So I grew up a super anxious child. I was always looking over my shoulder. I was always rushing to be the one who saved everybody, starting in my household, and then obviously that extended out to my friend groups and in my workplaces, because that act of self-abandonment to mediate the storms around me, whether there was one or not, because perceiving even the smallest shifts in people's emotions and perceiving that as a storm, that's a whole other conversation. But anyhow, because that became my template for how to walk through this world, that was my constant life experience was just being the person who everybody learned to depend on because that was the example I set. That was what I showed people through my actions. And whether consciously or unconsciously, the fact of the matter is that when you make people's lives easier, even if it comes at the cost of your own well being, some people consent to that and place that load on you. And over time, this perpetuated into several scenarios where in my teenagers and in my early 20s, I befriended people who were extremely emotionally codependent on me. I was constantly getting calls from people who I called friends at the time. They're no longer in my life anymore, but I was getting calls from these friends who were having the most minute crisis in their lives, and they were panicking, calling me at work, completely disrespecting my boundaries over time. And I just felt that that was what was expected of me as a friend. I just thought that that's what friends did, was they drop everything to be there for their friends or family or my partner. Like, I walked through life putting myself as not even second priority, but as like my 36th priority. And it destroyed my health, my mental health, and my sense of knowing where I stood in the world as a person. And it wasn't until I became certified as a somatic coach, which is a modality that I practice now in my business, that I learned this concept that I want to talk to you today about, what's called merging after trauma. So, to break it down for you real quick, somatics is derived from the word soma, which means the body, the experiencing body. And in somatics, what we're really concerned with is understanding how our body understood and now holds the stories of what we experience throughout life. And when we're talking about merging in anxiety, in self abandonment, and this is particularly true for people who learned that their survival rested on being the one who dropped everything for the needs of others, because that is what controlled the environment around you and ensured your safety, and also ensured the love of your caretakers towards you. But merging is this thing that happens when, because of those early traumatic experiences, you do not have a sense of boundaries with your body and your identity. Merging, if you can think about one of your hands being you and your other hand being either a person or your work, if you can imagine yourself and that thing merging, it is because your body never learned where it begins and ends. And so everything and everyone you see and have somewhat of an attachment to or a relationship with, you see yourself and that thing as merging. And what that can look like is over involving yourself in that person's emotional experience, in their problems, in their needs, when you never consented to it or were never even really asked to do that in the first place. This can look like how you feel is how I feel, your needs are my needs, your problems automatically become my problems. And when we merge with all these different tasks and people over time, what this can create is this fragmentation of our identity where we believe that our worth is based off of how much we provide to the world and how much we actively betray our instincts in the name of providing some kind of good to somebody else. And if what I'm saying is landing with you so far, I just want to invite you to take a big inhale and a big exhale and just let your body and your heart respond to that in whatever way is intuitive for you. Because as I said at the beginning, your sensitivity is not a weakness. I think that sensitive girlies, such as ourselves, are some of the most powerful people in a world that tells you to override your instincts with logic and build your life off of that. Sensitivity and self-abandonment are not the same thing, and they are often confused as the same thing. Your sensitivity gives you the power to have compassion for others, to have empathy for others, to be a space where other people feel safe enough to let their guard down. It's one of the most beautiful gifts that we can offer other people. But when your sensitivity meets your pattern of self-abandonment, that is where things can get messy. And we're here to honor your sensitivity and learn to separate it from self-abandonment. As I said, this anxiety is deeply rooted in not only the survival patterns that we may have had to take on as children to ensure our safety, but also, if you're an identifying woman watching this, everything society tells us about who we are and where our worth comes from is rooted in being the one who completely abandons herself for the children, for her partner, for the family at whole. And that is where women are told to derive their value. And so if you are here and you're witnessing that pattern within yourself, I just want to applaud you, because taking your life back, taking your agency back from dissociating yourself, I'll say that's a layered word. I'll say unadopting that identity is one of the most courageous things a woman can learn to do in her life. And I'll tell you how I personally learned to take my agency, my sovereignty, and frankly, my well-being back from this belief. And it started when I hit this really dark patch where I would cyclically, like on the dot, every 2 or 3 weeks, I would just be so completely overridden with burnout. Like, I would work and I would go and see all these people and I would go to my workouts and my dance classes, and then every 2 or 3 weeks it was just like I would hit a wall and be completely exhausted, in shambles, crying all the time, and I didn't understand where that came from. But it wasn't until one day I was witnessing my inner self-talk from the moment I got up to the moment I went to bed. And what I saw, and I really want you to pause if what I'm about to say resonates with you, what I saw is that from the first second I opened my eyes, my inner critic was automatically going off saying, you need to do this. You need to do that. Why haven't you gone up yet? Why haven't you called so-and-so yet? Why haven't you touched base with so-and-so yet? Why haven't you gotten back to so-and-so yet? From the beginning of my day, I was outsourcing my capacity to other people because that is what I felt was my responsibility. For you, this might look like a regular dialogue in your mind that says, I need to be there for all of these people first. I can push self-love and self-care on the back burner. I need to go to work and I also need to call all these people and get back to this person's request and yada yada yada. Maybe you're even building your entire schedule off of people demanding for your time instead of what you actually want to do with your time, because you think that your time is valuable rather than something that should be going to other people. And this is what created the biggest shift in not just my awareness, but in my nervous system, because in paying attention to why that voice felt that massive responsibility, in understanding why that voice was being so mean, we call it parts work in the world of somatics, which is when we look at these different voices in our head as parts playing a purpose in our day-to-day life to ensure our survival and belonging in some way, even if it's in the most unloving of ways sometimes. When I learned to understand why this part was so furious and so afraid of not constantly outsourcing my time to others, that is where I was able to see where I'd left those pieces of myself that I had merged out of fear of not being loved, not being seen, not being validated by the people around me. And I was able to start taking them back. And when I say taking them back, for you, what that might look like is asking that voice what it's so afraid of. What is the worst outcome it's predicting for? Does it think that if you don't drop everything to go have dinner with your family every Friday, that they'll shun you out of their lives? That they will stop talking to you, that they'll stop funding your education? Do you think that if you don't drop everything to take the phone call of that friend, that they won't be your friend anymore? That they will revolt in some way to you trying to protect your peace? And by the way, these are all very real scenarios, and in many cases, they are very real reasons to be afraid. And if that is true for you, my invitation to you in this episode is to really ask yourself if you were honest with those people about where your capacity is at, if you are feeling completely and utterly overextended, exhausted, and unseen, do you feel that if you came to those people with that honesty and that vulnerability, that they would respect you? And if they don't, then that tells you a whole lot about where those people's care for you is. And the truth is, and this was certainly true for me when I chose to step away from those friendships in my life, I realized that, and really listen to what I'm going to tell you here, your self-abandonment is a convenience to some people. And those people will see your honesty about wanting to give time back to yourself as an inconvenience. And you should believe them when they show you that. Because what they are showing you is that their relationship to you is built off of a fear-based version of yourself that they are capitalizing on. The real people that you want in your life are the people who are going to encourage you to break up with the fear that is driving how you show up in the world. And you deserve people in your life who want to uplift the most whole and healthiest version of you, not people who will stand for seeing the burnt out, exhausted part of you who has never learned to see herself as anything other than a convenience for others. You came here to live this life discovering yourself, not to live this life abandoning yourself in places other than the garden that you are building for yourself, for the future love that enters your life, and for the future goals that you want to plant and watch blossom. And your anxiety and your sensitivity are not weaknesses, they are just signals from the way that you're living your life right now that something is out of alignment. Your anxiety is literally your body trying to get your attention because it is losing you. It feels like you're not listening to the signals that it's trying to give you about what it really needs. And there's so much work to be done in learning how to be okay with not doing, to be okay with not placing our worth and our sense of being deserving on the things that we achieve or the people we serve. And that's a whole other podcast conversation for another time. But if you do nothing else after this episode, ask yourself where you've left pieces of yourself and how you can start guiding those pieces back to you, to put you back together into your wholeness. Not that you're broken, but you deserve to be the one who chooses who gets what parts of you. It shouldn't be you fragmenting yourself in the face of anyone that you perceive needs you, because you're not here to save anyone, darling. Your only job in this life is to realize that you don't even need to save yourself, because you've never needed saving. You've needed loving from the very beginning. And today you showed up and you loved yourself by listening to this episode. So I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for spending your day with me, even if you were busy and you found some time to listen to my voice and my wisdom. I'm so happy that I was able to impart it on you. And I hope that moving forward, it helps you or someone in your life in some way. And I do also have 3 spots open right now for my one-on-one mentorship in my somatic frameworks for women with deep attachment trauma, with deep self-betrayal trauma, or especially if you recently left a relationship and the pieces I said about yourself, your identity being fragmented or merged with that of other people, that is the depth of work that we do in my mentorship. So I will link the application form to get a free discovery call with me in the description for this episode. I highly, highly recommend it. It's an hour of you and me sitting down, getting to know each other a little bit, but always, always with the intention of you walking out of that free 1 hour call with something to help propel your journey of healing moving forward. Thank you so much for being with me in this episode, and I will see you in the next one.